What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Week 17 NFL Power Rankings show. I hope you had an excellent holiday weekend. We're going to get right into it here. If you could just take a second and hit that like button down below, it really helps support my channel. I really appreciate it. And let's get into it. Starting at the bottom with the Cellar Dweller tier, a new team taking the 32nd position in the rankings, the Indianapolis Colts, a team that has seemed to lost all sense of fight. The offense is decrepit, to say the least. Couldn't convert a third down on Monday Night Football. It was just hard to watch. They, to me, are the worst team in football right now, although not far behind our number 31 team, the Denver Broncos, who seem to reach new lows every single week, although Broncos fans, I think, will say this one hurts a little bit less than previous weeks because it did result in the firing of Nathaniel Hackett, getting just slaughtered on Christmas Day against the LA Rams, a game that was supposed to have hype and expectations sat on both sides, but especially for the Denver Broncos. And you know, some people will say that this is new horizons and things are going to get better. They certainly can, but I don't think it's as simple as replace Nathaniel Hackett. You've got teammates yelling at each other, Russell Wilson playing horribly. This team has a lot of work to do, and they are in a horrible situation. Then the Chicago Bears, they're going to climb up a spot up to number 30. Look, I'm not trying to paint rainbows and butterflies over the Chicago Bears organization, but they're at least competing. They were actually in that game against Buffalo. A lot of mistakes and things went against them that ultimately the final score was way out of reach, but they were actually competitive in that game if you watched it, and they have a quarterback that can move the ball right now, even if he's out there with nobody. So I do think the Bears are a better team than our previous two teams for what it's worth, but they're also a team that very well might end up with the number one overall pick because of the way these Houston Texans are playing, who come in ranked 29th. Look, man, 2 weeks before this, they were competitive against, the Chiefs and the Cowboys, and now they get a win against the Titans. They've kind of found a little bit offensively, and they're just playing hard is really what it comes down to. They're going to get a +3. They still are hoping that they can get Bryce Young in the number one overall pick, although Kuiper says Will Levis is QB1 right now. That's fascinating. But, yeah, +3 for the Texans. Good for you. Then the Arizona Cardinals at 28, just kind of climbing up by default here. Hey, they took the Bucs to overtime with Trace McSorley. This team has some weird bit of fight in them. This defense continues to be surprisingly solid when they have no business being even close to average. So I'll give them some credit for that, but obviously this team is trending in the wrong direction. Then the LA Rams are going to stay in the Cellar Dweller tier. They put up a bunch of points against the Broncos this week and just a slaughter fest on Christmas Day. But I'm not taking this team all that seriously moving forward. But a +1 for the Rams. Then we're going to get into another tier here. I couldn't think of a name for this one other than this tier is probably unnecessary, but I think it's there. I think these teams are notably better than the Cellar Dwellers, but they're not good football teams. And that starts with the Atlanta Falcons. The offense has taken a step back with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Arthur Smith has been justified in not playing him earlier in the year. He has looked worse than I expected. He just doesn't look ready to play. And they're working around that. They're trying to run the ball as much as possible. But at least this week, you get some optimism with some offensive explosiveness from rookie running back Tyler Algier and Drake London possibly having his best game, really looking like a more dominant version of what we've seen, in my opinion at least. Some really big-time catches that you hope to see from a guy with that frame. So you get some optimism there with some of these players. But they're just not a competitive team right now, and that defense is just so paper thin. Then the Cleveland Browns at 25. They're going to drop down 2 after losing to the New Orleans Saints this week. I will say it's getting better with Deshaun Watson the last couple weeks. He does seem to be getting up to speed a little bit. I know the 10 points doesn't look great. There were probably 2 dropped touchdowns in this game, so take that with a grain of salt. They're trekking on, not a trustworthy team and not a good team right now. Then the Tennessee Titans at number 24 are going to drop down 12 spots, really with news that Tannehill's going to miss the rest of the season, something I wasn't aware of when we made this episode last Sunday night or Monday night, whatever. But yeah, I mean, the reality is they can't pass the ball right now with Malik Willis. He's just not ready, and seems to be kind of being forced into playing a style that he's just going to have to learn how to play from the pocket. And 2 interceptions this week, not even 100 passing yards. They did some good stuff with him in the design run game, but right now they're one of the worst offenses in the NFL. They don't have pass protection. They don't have receivers. It's just a mess offensively. And even defensively, they do everything they can, and we know how well coached they are in that side of the ball, but they don't have a true pass rush. Their secondary has been very hit or miss, so they're just running out of steam. They're not a good football team right now, and I think they deserve to be in this tier with just sloppy, inconsistent, borderline bad football teams at the moment. Let me interrupt the video real quick to tell you about my friends at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has gotten me right back into daily fantasy, and I'm sure you guys have all seen the screenshots going around of people enjoying their daily pick'em contests. At Underdog, you're only competing against yourself, unlike the salary cap leagues where you have to beat out thousands and thousands of people. Well, on Underdog, you are just picking 2 to 5 player props, anything from over/under receiving yards, interceptions, fantasy points, and you're parlaying them together. You can also buy insurance so that you're allowed to miss on one of your picks, and the payouts are huge. If you go 5 out of 5, that is 20 to 1. Buy insurance, that's 10 to 1. So you can put $2, $3, $4, $5 on any one of these given bets, and the payouts are outstanding. So even if you don't win, it feels like you're winning because it increases your interest in any given football game. I have loved playing on Underdog Fantasy. I think you guys are too. And now if you sign up using promo code TFG, they will match up to $100 on your first deposit. That's promo code TFG at Underdog Fantasy. And then we got a tier gap up, and we're going to be hip this week. We're going to just call this the mid tier. Call it, from the episodes of weeks past, Schrodinger's box of cats as well. These are just average teams, very week to week. Some are in the playoff picture, some are not due to other teams being bad, but it is what it is. These teams are just not good football teams, but they're not horrible either. Number 23 is going to be the New Orleans Saints, jumping up 1. They beat the Browns this week. I believe their playoff hopes are still alive. I do like the way this defense has played over the last couple of months. They've found a creative offense with a true 2-quarterback system. I mean, this week in Cleveland against a bad run defense in bad conditions, they really broke into Taysom Hill, but Andy Dalton continues to be just very consistent, having an incredibly underrated season. He's PFF's 3rd rated quarterback right now. People are going to laugh at that. And no, he's not the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL, but it's a very strong reflection of just how to the book he's been. He's been accurate. He's pushed the ball downfield legitimately well. So I think Dalton is making a case to be a starter for somebody next year, which I think is really cool. But yeah, I mean, they just aren't a good football team, right? Then the Carolina Panthers +3 this week, a dominating win over the Detroit Lions, really breaking into that run game again. They're showing that they're a one-dimensional team. If they can get that ground game going, they can get some play action stuff to build off of that in the passing game with Sam Darnold. But as they showed the week before, if they're not getting a good game on the ground, they're not going to have a good week. So like I said, just very week to week with the Panthers. But defensively, you got guys all over the place. Jeremy Chin, Brian Burns. I did see that J.C. Horn might have to shut it down for the year, bringing in Josh Norman. That's a nostalgic project that's not going to work out. But yeah, I mean, they're in the mix. They control their own destiny. Sam Darnold's actually playing pretty well for what they're asking him to do, and I like what they do in the run game, and that offensive line especially deserves credit, but I don't expect them to, seal the deal and go on this run here. I really don't. Then the LV Raiders, sure. -1 this week, losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Derek Carr, just not it, man. He's never been it. They're in a weird spot. Let's move on, honestly. I'm kind of done with the Raiders at this point. Then the New England Patriots +1, just by default of the Titans dropping. I mean, you could say they put up a fight against the Bengals, kind of. Like, they got brought back into that game because of a fluky Hail Mary touchdown. The Bengals guy deflected it and lands into Jacoby Myers' lap, costing me my fantasy playoffs. Yes, I'm a little bit salty about that. But then Jamar Chase fumbles. They're in a position to win, and then Ramondre Stevenson fumbles it back. So, I mean, whatever. They are a scrappy team. They're really struggling offensively right now, and they got beat. Pittsburgh Steelers +3. they're making things fascinating. They have a playoff scenario that's not entirely unobtainable. I got to shout out Mike Tomlin, man. I've been really hinting at it throughout this series leading up to this point where the moment they got TJ Watt back and Kenny Pickett, I thought was getting a bad beat after his first month of football where his interception total did not really reflect how he was playing. I think the Steelers are a solid team. They certainly have problems. They certainly have a lack of explosive upside, especially, but they're playing cohesive football right now. They have a kind of formula that works to kind of ride a nice line to hopefully pull these games out in the end. And if Tomlin can salvage a 500, above 500, a winning season, he has a good chance actually to get to 9-8 here, maybe even to make the playoffs. I mean, I'm not going to say deserves coach of the year, but this dude is just an unbelievable coach at the end of the day. So shout out to Mike Tomlin and the Steelers for pulling a decent season out of this thing. Then the Washington Commanders actually going to climb up one just because of the Tennessee Titans situation, but this is not a reflection that they're actually playing well. They have playmakers defensively, they have playmakers offensively, but honestly, their pass protection has been surprisingly poor. Granted, going against the best pass rush in the NFL with the Niners, but really exposed there. They end up going to Carson Wentz, which ultimately I do think is an upgrade. People don't want to admit it because Heineke's fun and everyone hates Carson Wentz, but he is a better quarterback. We'll see what that means going forward. They still have a chance to make the playoffs. They really do. They got to beat the Cleveland Browns this weekend. We'll see how that goes. Not a trustworthy team with the state of their quarterback situation and the offensive line. And just honestly, just kind of average coaching. I don't hate what they do on either side of the ball, but I definitely don't love it. The definition of a mid football team that technically can make the playoffs, I guess. The Seattle Seahawks at 17. The offense just has not had it really over the last 5-6 weeks. They burst onto the scene. I think they're still capable of any given week bringing back that MVP level Geno offensive explosiveness, but it just hasn't been the case. Defensively, they got problems. Mid football team. They lose again this week. Then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I really felt like they would be dropping this week, but nobody really earned the right to jump them here. I don't think. They sneak away a win against the Cardinals. They hold on to first place in that NFC South, but the offense continues to really struggle. I mean, I thought they would crush Trace McSorley's Cardinals, and it took an extended overtime to beat them. So they're going to stay put, but I just do not think this is any team with any form of upside right now. But that's going to wrap up that mid-tier, just a bunch of bland football teams. But then we're going to get into our next tier, which are, in my opinion, seriously flawed playoff contenders. Teams that do have elements of upside within their team, but have blatant holes as well. And all these teams are in a pretty prime position if they can execute on their end to get into the dance. So that's going to start with the New York Jets. They are still very much competitive for this playoff spot, and we know this defense is nasty, and they were very good again against the Jaguars on Thursday Night Football. They are going to drop down one, and the Zach Wilson thing is obviously unfortunate for the future outlook of this team, but getting Mike White back, we know that is an upgrade offensively. And yeah, I think this team could sneak in, and it's a defense that nobody's going to want to play. That's for damn sure. Then the New York Giants at 14. Honestly, despite the loss this week, this was maybe the most impressed I've been by the New York Giants. And I think that's going to be incredibly ironic based on some of the conversations we've had about the Giants with Giants fans this week. But Daniel Jones played very well. Saquon definitely looks back. Dexter Lawrence is like legitimately one of the best defensive players in the NFL this year. And Isaiah Hodgins, man, he was an absolute my guy coming out. You can go back to my draft analysis if you really want. I reluctantly compared him to Adam Thielen. So to see him out there in Minnesota against the Vikings, obviously, doing a lot of Adam Thielen stuff, coming down with really tough catches, showing the body control. He's a legit piece there. So with him and Slayton and Barkley, an O-line that's playing okay, Daniel Jones, the play calling, they have an adequate offense and a really aggressive, well-coached, disciplined defense. So they're a legitimate football team. The last couple weeks, I think the Giants have reclaimed some of that energy and tenacity that they showed earlier in the year, whereas October through November, They didn't show that to me. They're showing it again to me right now, putting them right back into kind of the top half of the league, and they're going to be in the playoffs at this point. They play a hapless Colts team. I expect them to take care of business there, and they're not going to go very far in the playoffs, but what a damn good job by Brian Daboll and all these guys. Then the Detroit Lions, going to fall down 3. I mean, they got ran all over against the Carolina Panthers, and that's obviously a glaring weakness for them. Moving forward, they did good against the Jets against the run the week before, so total Jekyll and Hyde performance. But when you look at that front 7 on paper, we know they have some pretty big deficiencies there on the interior and with the linebackers, and it showed up this week big time. And just offensively, honestly, the last couple of weeks, I guess, I don't want to pile on them because they did move the ball against the Panthers. They had a really costly fumble there, I think in the second quarter, that really swung this game. They do some fun stuff offensively, but Jared Goff does have his limitations when push comes to shove. So they're still a very solid football team, and I think in a good position to maybe make the playoffs, but they do have flaws. I think that much is clear, and they might just be a year ahead of it here for Detroit. Then the Miami Dolphins at number 12, and, with all things considered, like being sensitive with the concussion stuff, did Tua come in concussed in the second half that really impacted his accuracy and decision making? It's more than possible, but my goodness, that was ugly. Either way you want to slice it. They're probably going to be down to Teddy Bridgewater for the rest of the year. I still think they can win with Teddy Bridgewater. We know what McDaniel's capable of. We certainly know what these playmakers are capable, who were just absurd again against Green Bay. But a defense as well that does have certain holes in the secondary. So they are a clearly flawed football team, now down to their backup quarterback. But I still wouldn't count them out of making the playoffs here. And they can be an upset team, but right now, to put together consistent weeks performance, even with Tua, I don't think they're there. Then the Green Bay Packers at 11. People were pissed that I had them 15, 16, 17 the last few weeks. The writing's been on the wall. If you've actually watched this team, everybody wants to focus on that week 5 through week 9 stretch where they went on a 5-game losing streak. They couldn't move the ball, okay? Their offensive line was in shambles. They had no receivers. Well, they get Christian Watson. They get Romeo Doubs. The play calling's improved, and the offensive line has been dramatically improved. Rodgers, to me, is getting healthier and healthier every week. This is a very legit offense. They are top 10 in offensive DVOA since Christian Watson entered the lineup. So, for those that have watched the Green Bay Packers, the signs and the writing on the wall that they are at least somewhat back has been there. I still absolutely do not trust this defense, and they got entirely bailed out by whatever that was from Tua in the second half, just handing out Christmas gifts. But on paper, they have been better defensively the last couple weeks. So they are in a position now, if they win out, if they get one more loss from the Washington Commanders, they will be in the playoffs. And I don't think anybody wants to play this team right now compared to a lot of these other playoff teams. And the Vegas market backs that up. They are 3-point favorites against the Minnesota Vikings this week. Let's see if they can take care of business. Then the Baltimore Ravens +3. I will say I have been impressed by their ability to just hang around here with what they looked like over the last few weeks against Denver, against, they lost to Cleveland. There was one more game in there, I think. This was the 4th Tyler Huntley start, right? Well, they just have not moved the ball offensively. But they've hung around. They've kept themselves in prime position for the playoffs. They are in. And hopefully they can get Lamar into the mix with this great defense. There is a future without Greg Roman here, I do think, where they look to increase the upside of this team at some point. But look, you sprinkle Lamar back in there instead of Tyler Huntley, who's done a valiant job here. And you can see a world where they can scrap out 17-13, 20-16 playoff games where their defense is playing at an incredibly high level right now. So really tough team to rank right now. Is Lamar going to play this week? I don't know. Can they dominate anybody at this point? No, I don't think so. They are an old school option offense that's going to try to bully you to death. And honestly, I think they can do that in the playoffs. Can they do that 4 straight weeks and win a Super Bowl? Very likely no. Then the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to get a +2 this week. They win on Thursday Night Football. Trevor is playing like a top 10 quarterback right now. Doug Peterson is coaching out of his mind right now. He looks awesome just from a play calling perspective. I love the way he's kind of game planning. You see him against Dallas dial up double moves, which has been a big weakness for the Cowboys secondary. This week, looking at that Jets defense and saying, we can attack these guys over the middle of the field. And I think only 6 out of the 28 receptions for this team came to their outside receivers. It was all tight ends and running backs and Christian Kirk over the middle. And I love the way Peterson's coaching. Defensively, do I think they're going to hold a team to 3 points every week? No, I don't. But they do try their best on that side. So the Jags are tough. I'll be very surprised if they don't win this division at this point with the way Tennessee is playing. And that's exciting, man. Trevor Lawrence in what is, in a way, his rookie season with how the whole Urban Meyer thing played out. We'll see what he can do in the playoffs. I mean, if they can win a playoff game, that's a massive, pleasant surprise. That's asking a lot, but this is a tough team right now. And then we are going to move up into another small tier here, teams 8 and 7. It's going to be the Chargers at 8 and the Vikings at 7. And we're going to call this tier the weekly heart attack. Teams that, to me, play things way too close to the belt for a variety of reasons. Teams that have certain explosive aspects to the team, and teams that technically could win a Super Bowl, but to picture these teams who keep things so close to go on a run and manage to win 4 straight playoff games against playoff caliber opponents feels incredibly unlikely, but is technically possible. That starts with the LA Chargers, who Herbert's playing fantastic. You got to start with that. We have all noted the frustrating conservatism with the offensive play calling, and that just bothers the shit out of me as it does everybody else. Defensively, they've been playing much, much better lately. Credit to Brandon Staley. And they might be getting Joey Bosa back into the mix here rather soon. So that could get interesting. They are a frustrating team to watch at times, but in the top 8 here, the Chargers are in the playoffs. I'm excited to see what happens. Then the Minnesota Vikings, now 11-0 in one-score games. There is an element of mental toughness and skill and talent that comes with Jefferson being as incredible as he is, Kirk playing more aggressive, making big plays, and some clutch defenders. We know those edge guys, they've been a little bit more quiet as of late, but they can cause some chaos up front. Patrick Peterson has made some really clutch interceptions this year. So there are elements of all of the goodness that causes these close game wins, but they're in a hell of a lot of close games against seemingly whoever they play. And that's just really difficult to ask them to sustain into the playoffs all the way through into a Super Bowl. It's possible. It's unlikely. It's going to be interesting. Let's move on to our next tier. We've got some smaller tiers this week, which I think is okay. I do think these teams distinguish themselves. So another 2-team tier here. And these are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, but not as complete teams as, to me, the top 4 teams. So that's going to start with the Dallas Cowboys at number 6. Big win against Gardner Minshew and the Eagles. Watching that game back, I'm not going to say they got lucky. They played really well, but some big fumbles that really helped them seal that game. The Eagles with Gardner Minshew were head-to-head, and Dallas was a 6-point favorite. It was a 6-point win. I don't feel a whole lot different against Dallas this week, other than I will say Dak Prescott, to me, played probably his best game of the year, and he's going to have to continue to play like that, especially if this defense is going to prove to have some issues. I mean, they are giving up big plays. Their secondary didn't have a whole lot of answers right now over the last few weeks. So this defense, I thought, was going to head into the playoffs as an elite group. I don't feel that way about them right now. So it's tough. We know what they can handle, what they can accomplish offensively, but they're going to have to show that every single week if they're going to win a Super Bowl, which I do think they are capable of, but it is a big ask. Then the San Francisco 49ers at number 5, taking care of business this week against Washington. Again, that defense showing that they are the best defense in the NFL. They're going to make things a massive headache on them. I think it was a favorable matchup for them against a Commanders team that has struggled against great pass rushes with those quarterbacks that will put the ball in harm's way under pressure. So I still think Brock Purdy has yet to be truly pushed to see against a good opponent. Can he get to the drop back game and beat you with his arm? I like Brock Purdy. I'm very fascinated by him. But that part of things is something that the Niners have not answered yet. And until they do, I can't put them in the top tier. But they can absolutely win a Super Bowl with this defense playing like this and these playmakers and this play calling being the way that it is. But I do have a tier gap up into our top 4 teams. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to drop, though, to our number 4 spot, and the gap between these top 4 is razor thin. We're talking about on a neutral site. These 4 teams are probably within 2 points, all within each other, so tough to rank these guys. Let me know in the comments down below where you would split up what I think is a clear top 4. But the Philadelphia Eagles did lose this week, and defensively they haven't been as insane as they were to start the year, so maybe that's a slight red flag. But, offensively, they still did a damn good job with Gardner Minshew. Some unfortunate fumbles there, miscommunications like at the mesh point with some of these handoffs and stuff that just obviously cost them this game at the end of it. But these playmakers are ridiculous. We'll see if Jalen Hurts can get back this week or next week. I don't know. You want to get him healthy for the playoffs, and that's obviously going to reduce their ceiling a little bit. But Minshew, I think, was okay. So they're going to drop down 3 until we get some clarity on that quarterback situation. But that is going to push the Kansas City Chiefs up +1 into that number 3 spot. We know what Mahomes is capable of and what he's what he's accomplishing this year. Their schedule has just been kind of a joke these last few weeks. So not that the Seahawks are a bad team, but didn't put up too much of a fight there. I don't know. They're just kind of moving on. We know what this Chiefs team really is, and hopefully they can execute in the playoffs. Same thing goes for the Buffalo Bills. They sealed the deal against the Bears. They, to me, have shown a real nice adaptability in the last month. Their run game has been, it's kind of had a fear factor about it. They've been blocking well up front. They obviously have the threat of Josh Allen in the design run game, but Devin Singletary deserves a shout out. He has been making guys miss. He's looked incredibly explosive, kind of in a contract year, playing for a big payday. Got to respect that. You got James Cook kind of bursting onto the scene. They have provided a different element to this offense that we haven't necessarily seen in Bills teams past. So even if the defense isn't this elite group that they hoped to be, and even if their passing game hasn't been as consistent as they would have hoped, Josh Allen is making mistakes, and that is certainly worrisome. But the threat of really being a dual threat offense at the end of the day, I think has brought them back into this. I mean, they've always been a top tier team, but it is established a new fear factor about them. Then the Cincinnati Bengals at number 1, and maybe they don't have the fear factor that the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Eagles have, but I mean, certainly their receiving room does, and Joe Burrow does, but they, to me, are just, it's crazy to say based on some of the things we said about Zach Taylor coming into the year, and as of like week 4, we were trashing their coaching, but honestly, everything they have put together offensively with this new scheme as of that Saints game, week 5, they are one of the most adaptable, well-coached, well-designed offenses in the league, and they have a quarterback that runs it as well as anybody. Joe Burrow is playing as well as anybody in the league right now at quarterback, and week by week, he continues to come after that number 2 QB spot, and we're going to be doing quarterback power rankings this week. I know I promised it last week, didn't deliver. We had the holidays coming up, but going to get that out this week. We'll see if I end up putting Burrow ahead of Josh Allen in the how well they're playing this year rankings. But it's not just the offense is what I'm trying to say. Defensively, Lou Anarumo is making a very strong case to be, defense a head coach consideration. Just they put together great game plans week after week. And I didn't think I would say that about the Bengals, to say heading into January rather, they are possibly the best coach team in the NFL at this moment, just as far as how much they're impressing me and the adjustments they're able to make throughout a game. It is just so impressive. And these two teams play, Bengals, Bills. I hope this lives up to the hype. Big game for the Bengals to, I guess, reassert themselves that they are here to stay. They are a legitimate Super Bowl team. They are deserving of this number 1 power ranking. They are a 1-point underdog. I'm going to go against that. I think the Bengals at home should probably be favored against the Bills, even if it's by a point. So there's your power rankings for week 17. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please drop a like, drop a comment as well. Where you think I'm right, where you think I'm wrong. Where would you rank these teams moving forward? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you later. Peace out.